Ambi Parameswaran is a brand coach, brand strategist, and founder brandbuilding.com, a brand advisory. He served as VP, then as CEO of FCB Ulka from 2003 to 2013. In a career spanning 35 plus years, Ambi has helped some of the most memorable brands of all time, including Daikin, Brufen, Santur Soap, Sundrop Cooking Oil, TCS, ICICI Bank, Wipro, Indica Cars, Zee TV, among others. So basically, this is the who's who of Indian advertising that we're talking about. These are the brands that we grew up with. And I know many people who have their own connection with these brands through these taglines and ads, stuff that they have heard and watched many, many years ago. So we decided to pick Ambi's brains about lessons in brand building that can be applied to organizations looking to influence people's minds and hearts from a distance. In his usual style, Ambi narrated anecdotes to reinforce his points. Ambi gave examples of how different ad agencies were known for a certain way of thinking and delivering. We spoke about why it is important for organizations to build a mythology about themselves, something that ad agencies are very good at. We also spoke about personal branding, how not to think about it. And we learned 2 secrets of Ambi's storytelling prowess. So go ahead and listen to this fascinating conversation with Ambi. Hi, welcome Ambi. Welcome to the CTQ Smartcast.
Thank you, Harish, for having me on your Smartcast. I look forward to talking and listening and learning.
Thanks. So I'm going to put a slightly tricky question up front, and especially this is true with the people that we've been working with. So in the last 2 years, a physical distance has grown between many companies and their employees. Suddenly, companies lack the very carefully created, a lot of money spent on the physical environment and personal touch through which they used to influence and retain employees, right? Yes, so if there is one function that understands how to influence minds from a distance, I think that is advertising and branding. We thought we will put you this question right up front. So if a CEO came to you asking for help in influencing employees distributed across the world, what would you advise them?
Do less Zoom meetings. There is a need to bring some sanity into this. And I think my simple advice is try and understand where your employees are coming from and maybe create, let's say, meeting free Monday or meeting free Wednesday or something like that. Give them space. Everyone is working from home. They're juggling various things. And on top of this, HR is organizing an Antakshari. Hey, come on, I've got other things to do. So you need to do that. You need to do these bonding and these kind of team building activities, but understand where they're coming from. Give them some time to breathe. And hopefully when things open up, start doing face-to-face meeting and offer them the opportunity to meet face-to-face. I was talking to someone from advertising and he said, this very bright girl joined and within 6 months she left us. The problem was I never met her. All that I did with her was Zoom meetings. And probably she never could get a feeling that, because in real life, when you meet people, you observe a lot of things, small things you can pick up and say, look, this person is unhappy. You can make that out from the tone of voice, from the inflection. And then you can, and as we do a lot of big decisions get taken on the corridors of companies, not
Right.
just in the boardroom. So that's missing. So my advice to them is, I say that to everyone who comes to me, understand your customer. Your customer is your employee.
Correct.
Where are they coming from? What are they liking? What are they disliking? And if you can help them navigate this, they'll be happy with what you're doing. So just for bonding's sake, create more Zoom meetings, more meetings. No, that may not be a good idea to pursue. So put yourself in their shoes. You're a big shot, you're a CEO, you got your own nice little room to do your meeting. That poor fellow is living in a 1-bedroom house where, he's sitting and doing this meeting, sitting in his bedroom. He's got a 5-year-old kid running around. That's life, right? That's life. So understand that. Give them time to give them free time. So I know some companies have actually created meeting-free Fridays, so that they can just be on their own without doing these back-to-back meetings. So That's my simple advice. Understand where your employees are coming from and understand what burden they are facing and try and ease the burden. Definitely online Antakshari may not be a good idea.
I think use very few words, but I thought there was a lot of stuff that you meant there, right? That empathy that you're talking about, I think it probably comes very easily for you to think of, right? Given your branding background, where somebody would come with a brief to you, you would probably first try to understand what is the as is for that brand, how do people perceive it. But these things are alien to people running offices for whom the world was operating in a certain manner. Now there's some disruption and they're just waiting to go back to the old world, or just try to do what they used to do back then in a remote, just move everything that was being done then onto the online channels. So how should people be thinking about building that empathy, right? It may be coming naturally to you, or you may have worked towards building that empathy. How should these people who are running these offices, taking these decisions, how should they build that empathy?
I think building empathy starts, since I'm a certified coach, so building empathy actually starts with active listening, active listening is not just hearing what you're saying, but using all my 5 senses to listen to what you're saying. Are you doing that? So if you can do active listening, automatically you will develop empathy. Empathy is not sympathy, right? There is a big difference between sympathy. Sympathy is, oh, I'm so sad, you're living in a one-room apartment and then your kid is running around. That's sympathy. That's not empathy. Empathy is putting yourself in that person's shoes to feel the pain or whatever that person is feeling. So that comes through a conscious process of active listening and putting yourself in the other person's shoe, because we live in isolated cubicles, right? So I may not even know what trouble someone is going through when he has to come for a meeting on Zoom. And you say, what is so great about coming on a meeting on Zoom? No. It's possible that his kid is also doing his class and his wife will be doing something. And therefore, how do you manage this? So show that empathy, show that care. And I don't think to be fair, during pandemic, I think a lot of companies pivoted very quickly, right? I know of companies who arrange for laptops for people, the dongle to people, and I know some companies even arrange for chairs to be moved to houses, and all this was done literally within like 3, 4, 5 days. And the way, I'm not talking only India, I think globally companies pivoted so dramatically is amazing. But then after that, now you start putting your CEO hat, saying, is that guy really working? Can I put some little thing in his laptop so which monitors whether the guy is sitting in front of the computer or he's goofing off? Those are really problems of trust deficit which exist between companies, and therefore that is something which is sad. But some companies had to resort to some of those tools and techniques to monitor what the employee is doing. Today you get a report. I mean, you get a report how many employees were actually sitting and working on their computer, how many hours every day. Earlier you didn't have that. So he might have come to office and goofed off all the time. You never knew that. But now you've got these new tools, you're monitoring him every minute, which is clearly going to cause a lot of trust deficit. So empathy comes from, are you ready to put yourself in your employee's shoes and feel the pain, right? If you can feel the pain, then you will know what to do, what not to do.
And I think another big part of having this sort of sense of community, sense of kinship with your fellow workers also has to do with some of the mythology around the whole team, right? Famous ad agencies have had their own mythologies, stories of ad campaigns and awards and challenges, and these are the kind of things that also earlier used to get propagated through these corridor conversations. And people like you have done a fantastic job of actually documenting this in India, starting with your books on case studies, where earlier we would just have only case studies all the way from early 1900s, but from US, nothing in India. But you did that. So what role do this documentation effort, what does that play, what role does it play in building the distinctive brands as seen by employees of these agencies, and we can then probably draw an extension to companies in general also about building this method.
I think all agencies have their own kind of foundation myth where they come from, and they build it so that brings a feeling of togetherness among the team, right? So if you remember, Ulka had its own myth, which is about Bal Muntur walking out of that time DJ Kamer, which then became Ogilvy with 6 people. And the myth was that he walked out with the talent, not a single account. And then he went and looked for business, and it took him time to build that business. And then when it came to calling the name for an agency, he didn't call it Bal Munkur Advertising. He talked to his mom, and his mom said, call it Ulka. Ulka means shooting star in Sanskrit, and that's how the name was born. So that's part of the agency mythology. So there was this feeling in Ulka that we are all maybe working here for a salary, but we are actually entrepreneurs. We are concerned about getting business, holding business, making money, and therefore getting our salary, getting our promotion, getting our income. And this kind of brought alive to me a guy called Ritesh. He went to Dubai, and along with 2 other people, he set up an ad agency in Dubai. And he came for one of our office parties, and we're talking to him. So he said, we have about 45 people working with us, and about 10 of them are ex-Ulka. So I said, that's great. And what's the difference? He said, no, there is a difference. An ex-Ulka guy, the day he walks in, starts believing that it's his own agency, that he will not see it as a 9-to-5 job. It's his own agency. He sees his clients as his lifelong commitment, and therefore he behaves differently. So this whole thing about being entrepreneurial was something which was hidden. And when we celebrated our 50th year, one of our creative directors came up with a brilliant line, which is, what is Ulka? Making brands famous, making clients rich. And recently, Ajit Ranade was telling me, you remember that video you guys played during a 50th? I said, kya tha, yaar? I had forgot. So he said, something making brand famous and making client rich. I said, yeah, now I remember. Then I located it. So it was all about that. We are not here to win awards. We are not here for personal glory. We are here to build the client's business. And if you build the client's business, our business will automatically grow. That was the mythology under which our agency was built. An agency like Ogilvy is built on creative. We are all about creative because David Ogilvy said that, and he put down these rules for good creative, and we follow that, and we are very focused that our product is the creative. Ulka was the other things. Our product is strategy. Creative is a byproduct of the strategy. Ogilvy used to say, no, we'll find a creative solution. Right? And we'll retrofit a strategy to that. Both can work, and both work very well. So we had these mythologies, and I'm not talking about us here. In the US, there is this whole mythology about how food cone building was born. It was Albert Lasker who ran an agency called Lord and Thomas, and he was a copywriter there. He bought the whole agency and he ran it. And at one time, he was probably the richest advertising man in America. And he owned the brand Pepsodent, which he sold to the Lever Brothers. He also owned a part of what is today called the Wrigley Stadium. So he was a big man. But then at one particular time, I think in 50s or 60s, he said, or even before that, he said, look, I've done enough. I'm leaving. And he said, I'm going to hand over this agency to 3 people. The person running New York, the person running Chicago, the person running San Francisco. So that was Emerson Foote, Fairfax Cohn, and John Belding. So he said the company will be named East to West, Foote, Cohn, Belding. So he told these guys, don't pay me any money. I'm taking away all my assets, which means building, all that will be mine, but you keep all the clients. So some of those clients dated back even before Albert Lasker. And that's part of mythology, about how the agency was born, how it was built. So every good agency, again, Leo Burnett has its own legend about you should always reach for the stars, but at least you will not end up with a handful of mud. That's the saying of Leo Burnett. Doyle Dane Bernbach, again, Bill Bernbach had his own thing, a theory about creative is not about science, it's about art. It's about persuasion. And persuasion can come through a clever play of words and visuals. So agencies, both in India and globally, definitely have mined this thing about creating mythology around the agency, how it was born, how it was built, what does it stand for. Like in FCB Ulka, we believe that we stand for strategy, right? You may not say that our creative is great, but the strategy will sparkle through, right? And because strategy is critical, we have a strong account planning team. We have 25 people working in account planning. We recruit a lot of MBAs, and we used to come to Pune, recruit from Pumba and Symbiosis and all the. We recruit MBAs. We train them. We train them for a year, and for the first 3 months, they do no work, including they spend 3 weeks in the field as a sales rep, along with various client companies, sales rep like Amul or Wipro or ITC. So it's all drilled into them, saying, look, guys, you are going to be a trusted strategic partner to your client, which means you better know the product as well or better than the client. So it was part of mythology, it was part of our ethos, or mission, all that. So that's what kept, otherwise what? And Fairfax Cohn made this statement that the only assets we have goes down the company elevator every night. That's the only asset an agency has. And that's true of consulting, that's true of any human resource oriented thing. So you build those things and you build the mythology, you build your story around how you were born, what you've done, how you built, and then that kind of has its own life of its own, it percolates. And moving to corporate, Harish, some companies in India have done a great job. For example, if you take the Tata Group, and I had the chance of working on several of their brands, Tatas have done a great job of archiving stuff, building mythology around Jamshedji Tata, Dorab Tata, Ratan Tata, and then of course G.R.D. Tata, and now Ratan Nawal Tata. So they have built those mythologies, and of course they do great work. But it's important that you capture this. Not too many Indian companies have done a good job of creating archival material. So like you spoke about case studies, and good that you remembered. People say, how do you write 10 books? I've not written 10 books today. My first book came out 20 years ago. Just like you said, a book of cases. And what you said is right. 20 plus years ago when I was teaching at NMIMS, and those days buying these Harvard cases are all very expensive. So what do you do? So I actually wrote some article on some of the brands I worked on and used them for teaching. And it turned out that went on very well. And then I converted that into a book. And then I had a second book. And of course, now a lot of academic institutions are writing cases, big cases. My cases are much lighter. Call it case light or something like that. Not 35 pages. At best, my cases are probably 10 pages at best. But there was a reason for writing it, is to use it for education, use it for teaching. So again, use it for strategy, use it for understanding. Right? So part of that, which is why I did what I did. And I'm delighted that you remembered that.
Yeah. So, in fact, in our experience, what we've seen is companies which have done something around building that mythology, they have had a better chance of building that sense of community and didn't have as much of a challenge over the last 2 years because there was that sense of belonging, that sense of togetherness, working towards something, the whole is larger than the sum of parts mindset. That has been much easier for companies which did that hard work of putting the mythology together, right? Continuing from mythology, you've studied religion as well, another example of an area that has influenced people across history, right? Through rituals, again through mythology, through stories passed on through oral tradition and all of that. So what lessons do you think we can all learn from the stickiness of religion in the context of the corporate world and future relevance and all those things?
So I did my PhD on religion and consumer behavior, right? And then I tried converting the thesis into a book, and my publishing editor from Penguin said, no one will buy this. And then we discussed what we should write. And then I wrote a book called For God's Sake, which was about a lighter look at religion, how religion impacts every part of our society, whether it is the dress, the house we buy, and the marriage, of course, and then multiple ways, festivals, everything in India is extremely. So in terms of religiosity, we are probably the highest. Maybe a few countries are higher than us, but religiosity-wise, we are the highest in the world. And it coexists with technology. And I'm sure many people who working in, let's say, TCS or Accenture go and they open up their computer and they do this to the computer before starting work. Right? So that's very religious. It's almost like computer is my, what do you call, my computer is my God. So I need to thank my God. I've seen this happen, right? People walking into our Nirmal building in Nariman Point, some people stop and they touch the floor and they do this before walking in. It's almost a place of worship. My workplace is a place of worship. So religion has its many negative things. I'm not for a minute denying that religion has been used for all the wrong reasons, but religion also something we can learn a lot from. And the way religion is used rituals. So ritualization is something which is a part and parcel of religion. How do you, that going to a temple, putting a particular clothes on for a festival, these are things which are ritualized by religion, has been handed down from generation to generation. And therefore, can companies adopt that? And companies, in a sense, have adopted that. For example, wearing a suit for a big meeting, right? It's a ritual. Doesn't matter. What you say is more important. But wearing a suit is a ritual which you perform so that you feel that your words will have more gravitas. Right? So whether it is that the fact that how do you dress and go, that's again a ritual which you learn from religion, and multiple ways in which religion touches businesses. For example, doing an annual puja is something very important. Everyone participates, irrespective of religion. Everyone participates in that. So these are things which come down from religion. They're not going to go away. And I think at one time we thought science will destroy religion and we'll all become very rational human beings. I don't see that sign of that happening in India. Definitely, maybe some parts of Europe, you ask people, they don't believe in God. In India, 95% of people believe in God, right? And when you say you believe in God, then the next step is you believe in religion, and then you believe in religion, you believe in a ritualistic form of religion.
Right.
So it's all great to say spirituality and religion are two different things, but in India we mix all that together. Spirituality, in its own form, says there is no need for any ritual. Right? That's what spirituality is. But in India, we mix it up, right? How can you not go to a temple and be a believer? How can you not have a religious idol at home and still be a believer? It's not something which we are easy with. So that's a tough one. But overall, I think religion can be used positively. We can learn a lot from how religion has used the power of symbols, the power of, for example, logo, right? Or the power of music. Today, brands are talking of music as an important part of brand identity. It comes from religion. Right? Religion has used music as an integral part of religious worship. So we can pick a lot of good things from religion. And of course, there are a lot of bad things which we should not.
Yeah, and moving from, so we spoke about religions to brands. Now, if we talk about these legacy brands, which have done fantastic over centuries, some of them have survived and thrived and flourished over hundreds of years. So, then what is the secret sauce of these legacy brands? The reasons due to which they survived through difficult times. Is there a parallel for individuals that we can draw from their journeys and implement in our own lives? Is there something that we can draw from brands?
Brands live in a changing world, and the whole thing is some brands end up becoming cultural icons, right? Whether it is in America, you talk of Coca-Cola, you talk of Harley Davidson, or even Mountain Dew, for example, is a part of. It's part of culture. There is a book called Culture Strategy by Douglas Holt. He writes about several such brands. So all these so-called strong brands have a very good root. Their foundation is based on some cultural truth, and they've lived that cultural truth for many years. So the successful ones have managed to keep changing with time. So there is a need to keep changing yourself in tune with what is happening around you, right? So otherwise you get fossilized into it. So whether it is Coca-Cola, which embraced it was only in a glass bottle, and today if you say no, I'll only sell in glass bottle, you're not going to be able to sell, right? So they They embraced the fact that they go to cans. They embraced the fact that they have to get into the lighter regime, which is Coke Zero and Diet Coke. And then now they're talking of actually, over a period of time, reducing the sugar content in their drink, because sugar is now seen as the new nicotine, right? So they will figure out a way of reducing the sugar content without screwing up on the taste. Look at a brand like Amul, which we at our agency had the chance of working for many years. Amul was founded on the belief that we should help our dairy farmer make money. Right? The dairy farmer cannot be at the mercy of the middleman. So and Dr. Kurian's vision was that, look, if we can build a seamless supply chain, collect the milk, process it, sell it to the consumer, and this marketing company, GCMMF, will retain a small margin. The rest of the money goes back to the dairy farmer. And that was the legacy of the brand, right? And even they wrote books about it, and the movie called Manthan was made. Right? So they built that thing. But then they realized you cannot keep selling only milk, because there is a particular limitation for selling milk. So the other great innovation of Dr. Kurian was that we get a lot of milk from buffalo. Right? And internationally, people said, no, you can't make milk powder out of buffalo milk. But then Dr. Kurian and his team said, no, we will. And they figured out a way of making milk powder. So they went from, so you need to keep, because when there is a flush season, you're actually buying a lot of milk, but the consumer cannot buy that milk. So you got a lot of stuck with a lot of milk. So they converted that into milk powder. And 30 years ago, they said, look, we need to move up the value chain. Can we launch ice cream? Some marketing experts said, look, who will buy an Amul ice cream? You know, ice cream is a cool young people's product. It's like quality, balls, Visa. There was another, I don't know whether Baskin Robbins had come, some other brand had come. And Amul is a milk brand. How will you succeed in selling ice cream under the brand name milk? But then Consumer Insight showed that in India, milk is also seen like, ice cream is seen as milk. So the campaign was therefore real milk, real ice cream. Amul ice cream. And Amul ice cream became very big, right? So if you go back 50 years ago, Amul was just milk. But today they have multiplicity of products, from Amul milk to milk powder to cheese to butter, of course. And then, of course, ice cream. And then now they're making all kinds of drinks using milk. So if you have to be, you may have a great legacy, but if you don't change with the times, you're going to die. So the most successful brands, for example, if Disney was still making cartoons, they would have died, right? Disney had to get into theme parks, they went and bought Pixar because they realized that they have the best technology in terms of doing computer graphics. They did that, and then they expanded themselves from the original selling of cartoon strips to look at the way and that company, and there is this very simple definition of what they do, which we call as a brand mantra, which is in 3 words you can describe. The 3 words are fun, family, entertainment. Right? So it's always family, it's entertainment.
Right.
That's what Disney stands for, right? So Disney has changed over the years, just as Amul has changed. Just as all these successful brands, which have become legacy brands, do understand where they're coming from, but they also see where the consumer is and how can I change, how can I adapt without giving up my core to be more relevant to the changing consumer. You do it, you will succeed. You don't do anything, you will fail. Ambassador car is no more, Premier Padmini is no more, right? Bajaj scooter is no more, but it's coming back as an electric scooter. Hopefully it will succeed. That's a great innovation. But look at the rejuvenation of Royal Enfield, right? It was given up as dead. But someone came and said, no, this brand has legacy. Why should everyone in India drive a 200cc mobile? Why can't I create an aspirational 350cc bike? And I will mine the legacy of this brand, which is hand painting the little golden line on the tank, etc., etc., etc. And I think a few years ago, their market cap became higher than that of Harley Davidson. Which, if you had said 20 years ago, you say, oh, not possible, right? But it is true, right? So understand the legacy of your brand, see where your consumer is, how is the consumer changing, and how can I change my brand to become more relevant to my consumer. If you do that consistently, you will succeed.
So this is a fantastic point. A lot of examples actually came to my mind. I just recently found out that Walt Disney had apparently mortgaged the intellectual property of Mickey Mouse to make the first Snow White film. So he basically put all his eggs in that basket because he felt that yes, if he can make people both cry and smile in a movie, I think he's made it. So people have taken these kind of risks, and of course we can always say that this is survivorship bias. We are talking of only the success stories. You always also had the story of say Cadbury's Dollops ice cream failing. I remember a very interesting story. I don't know if it was part of the mythology that they built, but apparently some Cadbury executive was traveling in his car and he stopped at a traffic signal and somebody was trying to sell him dairy milk ice cream. He said, no, we don't make dairy milk, we don't make ice cream. And that's when he realized that Choco Bar was being referred to as dairy milk because chocolate was so strongly associated with Cadbury. So that's when they said, okay, let's make Dollops. It failed miserably. These have been cases where people have tried to go towards where they felt consumers were. Some were strategic mistakes, some were mistakes of execution. But when you try to draw these parallels with individuals, right, with brands, you can clearly see numbers from market that tell you a story, right, that your market share is stagnant, dipping, or whatever. But if you want to apply these lessons to individuals, I think it's like that frog in boiling water problem, right? You don't know whether you are becoming irrelevant or not because you're in a job. Yes, you've not got any new offers, you've not got any promotion, but that is true for many people who are doing successfully as well, right? So how do you then apply those lessons? What are the signals that you should be looking out for to know that, oh, I'm probably not in sync with where the world is going. I need to do something different. How can you apply those lessons here?
I think you spoke about the frog in the boiling water. I think Charles Handy writes about that in his book, I think Raincoat. All of us are in a comfort zone.
Right.
And you say, Acha, Tika, I didn't get the promotion this year, I'll get it next year. It goes on like that. And then after a period of time, you realize that the water is boiling and you've not jumped out. Now you can't jump out because your legs are burnt. You can't jump, right? This can happen to the best of us. Right? And I don't think there is any one remedy to this. I think the solution to this is to be one, try and have a mentor whom you can go to.
Mm-hmm.
Like not only when you want to go to him for help, but go to him on a regular basis. Have a mentor who can give you a pretty unbiased opinion on saying, look, be patient, or look, you're making a mistake. So, I've written about this in one of my books. In the spring only I've written. This person joined this very big multinational company, one of the most admired companies. He was very delighted, and he was a senior position in another company, and he moved to this company. He called and told me, I tried. Very good. Then he realized that this company was playing football with him. They sent him almost a year. They sent him two months to different regions. And after a year, they made him head of regional manager of one of the smallest regions they had. And this guy was in a pretty national position earlier. So he was a little upset. After 3 months of that, he called me. I said, Ambi, this is looking bad. Yeah. They put me in this place. I don't know, whether I have a future in this company. So I said, look, you spent a year and putting the company's name on your CV is going to be great value. I'll say, bite your teeth and stay for 2 years. Right? Can you stay for 2 years? Yeah, I can stay for 2 years. Bite your teeth and stay for 2 years. Right? After 2 years, you're still unhappy, then you start looking, and I'll also look around for you. Once or twice I'd help him, so I'll look around for you. A year, exactly 2 years later, the CEO who was running this company almost like a personal fiefdom got sacked. And this guy was moved to a much bigger region as a head of sales for that region. And he proved himself. And a year or 2 years later, he was moved to the head office as a national head of sales and then went on to become CEO. Now, the same guy moved from almost a persona non grata to the national head of the company in 5 years' time. And he did a smart thing by talking. I'm not a genius. He didn't, in this case, I think talking to me helped him sort out his problems. A lot of times when you go to a mentor, the mentor cannot give you any advice because whatever you say and do, I can't tell you how you feel, right? I can only hold a mirror to you and say, look at these options and then see what you want to do. In this case, it worked very well for him. That he actually, by staying on, he managed to turn around his career and then he went on to run that company. The good thing he did, and I think the best thing he did was he had someone to talk to. Maybe he talked to 2 other people, right? But he had people to talk to. So if you are in any, as youngsters, you have to develop a network. I believe the network is extremely important. The network should be people who are not exactly like you. It should be people somewhat different, right? Whom you can go to for help and who are willing to tell you things which you don't want to hear, right? So if you can have a network, then hopefully they'll tell you, yeah, the water is boiling, jump now.
Right.
Or tell them, no, water is not going to boil, don't worry. So at least you will get a perspective from them. So have a network, have a mentor, so that also today, compared to the day when we were, today things are changing at such a fast pace, right? So if you're not agile, and if you're not continuously learning new things, reading new books, or subscribing to your own CTQ compounds kind of newsletters, right? You can just binge watch PT programs every day for 4 hours and think you're achieving great. At the end of the day, your boss calls and says, look, how is AI going to affect our business? You'll not have an answer. A lot of myth, and all MBAs think that once you've finished MBA, your education is over. Unfortunately, it doesn't. It actually has to start. So MBA, whatever education you go through, actually trains you how to keep learning. And you have to keep learning. If you don't keep learning, you're not going to do well. So you got to have a bunch of people, maybe friends, maybe mentors, who can tell you, Harish, you don't know enough about this stuff. Please go and try and understand what's going on. Or you're not being promoted. I don't think you deserve to be promoted. Or saying, look, you're not being promoted. Have you gone and met your boss and asked him why? He doesn't like me. I said, no, go ask him or ask her, right? What happened? And then take a call. So I've tried to answer your question by going all over the place because there's no one answer.
I think my biggest takeaway from this is having that outside in perspective, which is objective, is probably what the market does. It gives you non-controversial numbers, right? So it's much easier for brands. For individuals, you have to seek out that objective outside in view. So I think that's a difference.
Absolutely. Which is why, for example, I'm a certified coach. And unfortunately, in India, we don't have enough of the coaching culture. Coaching is seen as somewhat negative. He's not doing well, find him a coach. No, it should not be that.
Yeah.
He's doing very well, find him a coach.
Correct.
Which is why in Europe and US, we have this anathema about going to a psychiatrist. Same problem. Oh, वो तो दिमाग problem है, उसको psychiatrist से बाहर लेके. A coach can help you.
Right.
Coach can help you. We don't do enough of. We don't have enough of a coaching culture in India because coaching is seen as somewhat negative. But hopefully that will go. And I think today a new breed is coming up, where the executive says, look, I put in 15 years. I think I'll hire my own coach. Right? Jairam does a great work, great work in this area, saying, look, I'm not going to be working for the company. I'm working for you. So I'm going to help you chart out your next 10 years, what you should be doing. And we don't do enough of that.
Yeah. I think Dr. Atul Gawande has an excellent article about coaching. I think it is also part of the Daily Reader compound. I'll let you read that when you join us.
Atul Gawande is an amazing author. I met him at Jaipur Lit Fest 2 years ago. And I'm tall, yeah. He's taller than me. He's 6'3" or something like that. So I actually asked him, Dr. Gawande, how do you manage to write 3 full-length articles in the New Yorker and also hold a job as a surgeon?
Right.
So he said, once you get into the habit, it just happens. I don't know how I do it. But writing 3 10,000-word articles, which are highly researched, and then writing the books once in a while, you write the checklist manifesto.
Right.
stuff like that. And then he also has a day job as a surgeon. So I'd love to read what he has to say about coaching. I'm sure he has something.
Yeah. So on the individuals and creating that personal brand, today individuals are much more aware of the need of having a personal brand. They also have access to tools of creation and distribution. People can start their podcast, they can put their point of view, they can write blogs and all these things. Any advice for individuals, leaders, aspiring leaders on how to create a durable brand for themselves?
That's my new book. It's right now under edit, and I'm talking to my publisher. But the idea actually came last year during the lockdown. A few days after the lockdown, IIT Madras Alumni Association called me, and they said, "Look, everyone is under lockdown, so we want to do some online engagement with our alumni network." So I said, "Good idea. Why don't you plan a weekly engagement?" So they said, "Ambi, why don't you do 3 for us?" I said, "What?" He said, "No, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you do 3. So I said, "Okay." I know what got into me. I said, "Okay." And I did one on branding basics. The second one I did was what was called living the brand. And the third one, I did one on personal branding. Mm-hmm. And that kind of caught on, and I got invited by a few companies to do that personal branding. So I done a lot of reading and research on this. The problem and the myth, Harish, about personal branding is exactly what you said. I will write a blog. I will post on Facebook every day. I will post on LinkedIn every day. I will do a podcast. So I say, yeah, that is catching the tiger by the tail, right? That's not going to build your personal brand. So in my book, I've written a different kind of book. It's a narrative, talking. It's not a gyan wala book. It's more like a conversation like what we are having. I said, first you have to define who you are. What do you want to be? Everyone cannot be Harish. Everyone cannot be Amit Verma. What are you? And then decide what you want to do to build that brand and monitor it. Monitor how your brand is doing. If you think building a brand means posting random stuff on Facebook and LinkedIn and Insta and Twitter, sorry, that's not the way to go about building a brand. So there is a myth which says that to build a personal brand, you got to be very active on social media. Not at all, right? You can still be a very powerful personal brand with no presence on social media. If you're a young person, and I keep giving this little advice to young people, you're on social media, great. You're on LinkedIn, great. When you're sharing something which you found interesting, at least take the trouble of writing 50 words, 100 words. Why you're sharing. Don't just share it. And that's lazy. That is lazy use of social media. In the various WhatsApp group, I tried telling them, don't do this FAR. Forward has received. Write your comment here. I fail. And people tend to, it's easier to just say, share it that to say. So I think youngsters today are aware that they are personal brand. There is a personal branding opportunity, and they're conscious about how to build their personal brand. But my only caution is personal brand is not just launching your own podcast or launching your own video show or video channel. That's not it. First, you have to understand what do you want to build as a personal brand, and then say, look, I want to be seen as someone who knows this thing about music. So I'm gonna write about music, or I'm gonna write about AI, or I'm gonna write about storytelling, right? And then curate it. Then you curate the stuff, and you focus on that, and you build your personal brand. Don't do it just because someone else is saying, I've got 3,000 followers on Twitter and I've got 5,000 followers on Twitter. It means nothing.
Right. Yeah, I think it's the traditional challenge of starting with tools first rather than starting with a why. It's however many times you tell that, I think because there's this lure of knowing that, yeah, I can push out this podcast, I can push out this tweet, so let me just go ahead and start doing that rather than doing the hard work of figuring out where are you headed, what do you want to stand for, which takes some time and some soul searching, right?
Absolutely. The easiest part is to go on to social media and post something, right?
Correct.
But then before that, you need to say, what do I want to be known for? What do I want to stand for? and then say, look, this is what I will do. And take gentle steps. Post, when I coach, I was coaching, when I coach senior executives, and I say, look, you think you're a big guy in HR? Yeah, I've done this, I've done that. Hey, काम करो. On LinkedIn, write an article. Original article. Don't do the sharing business. Next month we meet, show me the article. So nothing. After 1 month, nothing. I said, नहीं यार क्या हुआ? नहीं sir, वो नहीं जम रहा है. I said, okay. Don't write a 1,000-word article. Write 500 words. Okay. You get the guy to write, and then he writes, and he says, yeah, now I think I can. This kind of stuff, I think I can write every month. I said, great. You made a beginning. Right? You want to be seen as a kind of a thought leader in the HR space. Start writing just one original article every month, roughly 400 to 500 words. Take an interesting topic related to what happened to you, mask the name if you want, write it relevant. And I'm happy to say that worked for him.
Yeah. So you mentioned storytelling, and I wanted to talk about storytelling as well. We're coming to the end of allotted time, so I'm going to rush through this a bit because I wanted to definitely cover the storytelling edition. And I think, like we spoke about before we started recording, I think this is going to demand a part 2, which we are going to schedule sometime soon. But let me cover a little bit of storytelling right now. So storytelling sometimes gets a bad rap. People, though we know that it is memorable. You have narrated so many different anecdotes in the course of this 1 hour long conversation itself, and all those are going to be sticky in my mind. But leaders especially tend to go with this whole data oriented thing and not talking a lot about anecdotes and stories. Where are they going wrong when they are not giving enough attention to storytelling?
I think that's part of this quarter-on-quarter number obsession which we have, right? So it's all about numbers, and we don't understand anything more than that. So Harish Damodar, who's a valuation guru, who's a professor at New York Stern, has written a book called Numbers and Narratives, I think. And he's a valuation guru. Huh? This guy lives numbers.
Right.
Lives this discounted cash flow, this, that, all that's his. He says, I missed on a lot of investment opportunities because I didn't understand this. And I dismissed the story as poo-poo. He said, I missed Netflix. I missed Amazon. I missed all these because I didn't understand. I didn't listen to their story, right? And it's a very readable book. It's not heavy duty finance stuff. We say, look, there are always, and there is this little, I don't know whether I read in that book or somewhere else. So I give this when I talk to startup entrepreneurs. You're standing in front of a bunch of VCs, right? You're going to make a presentation to VCs, and you have this particular device which can detect, let's say, abdominal cancer early. You can stand up and in the presentation start by saying abdominal cancer is the most prevalent form of cancer. 5 million people have it every year. Only 4 million are detected in time. And those people who are not detected in time had to go through serious surgery and they live a very compromised life all their lives. Whereas my device, which is going to cost whatever 1 lakh of rupees, can be bought by any hospital and can help detect early stages of thing. And I expect to sell 1,000 machines the first year, 2,000 second year. And sounds good, right?
Yeah.
But it's too mechanical. So instead, if you start by saying, still remember as a 12-year-old kid, I used to love my grandmother. And my grandmother used to have those special animal biscuits which she used to give me. And that green-colored Parry toffee. I was very fond of her and she's a lovely person. But she passed away at the age of 55. And because she had abdominal cancer, which was not detected in time, she used to complain of stomach ache and she used to take and all that. And that made an impression on me. That why should someone die of a disease which, if it detected early enough, she could have had a healthy life up to 70 or 80. And so when I started doing my research, I discovered this enzyme. And you tell the same story after that. But you got his attention by saying, look, I lost my grandmother. And it may be true, right? In this case, in my case, it's true. I didn't discover a thing, but I'm saying, he said, tell the story, build a story around your product. Don't go and tell a very boring thing about my machine costs 1 lakh of rupees, blah, blah, blah. Weave a story. And a story need not be bullshit, right? Story can be based on some real incident in your life. And you have to think hard enough to find that and relate it to what you're saying. Right? And if you do that, some of the most successful CEOs have been great storytellers, right? Whether it is, Dr. Kurian in India. He used to tell fantastic stories, and I've narrated a couple of them in my book, Sponge. He used to tell great stories, right? And I had a fortunate to have a boss, Anil Kapoor, who passed away earlier this year. Great storyteller. Sometimes he used to tell so many stories that we used to forget, boss, क्या discuss कर रहे हैं हम? नहीं यार ये discuss करना है, अभी decision लेना है. Well, चलो ठीक है, बोलो. Decision लेना. Right? So learn to tell stories. R. Gopalakrishnan, again, Tata Group.
Right.
Great storyteller. Harish Bhatt is continuing that. Great storyteller, right? Tell stories. Don't for a minute ignore the numbers. Numbers are important. You cannot get a VC to sign a 1 crore check by just telling some grandmother's story. It's not going to happen. But telling the grandmother's story, you're going to get him interested. And he's going to be that much more positively inclined towards giving you the time that you want, right? All of us have to develop. And a lot of time we learn just by even watching. I remember watching this episode of The Crown, I think the last season, right? It's about a landslide which happened and a school got destroyed and so many children died in that school. And people told Queen Elizabeth that you should visit that village to provide some support for the children, and the Queen did not visit, and she sent the Duke, and then later she reminisces that probably the biggest mistake she made in her life, right? But they didn't start with that. The story starts with a bunch of kids in school and the school teacher saying, tomorrow we have to narrate this poem, children. And he gives each of them a little book in which there's a poem. And the next 10 minutes, you show these little kids in different homes trying to memorize that poem. Our country is great, blah, 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 blah. So, and 10 minutes into that, you're all engaged with the children, how they're so excited that it's going to be school day. And they're all going to stand in assembly and they're going to read this poem out to the entire school. And they go to school, assembly starts, and there is a sound, and there is a landslide. 100 of them die. Right? The writer has done a great job, right? Starting not with a landslide, starting with the school, a very committed school teacher, teaching the children a poem, children learning that poem. This kid has kept that poem under his bed and he wakes up in the night and he reads it again, he puts it back again. That's a touch, right? That's a storytelling touch.
Right.
It was very powerful. So we have to tell those stories and we have to develop an ability to tell those stories. And we have to be like sponge, right? We have to pick these little things which are happening around us and dock it away and use it in different occasions. Like I remember I wrote this book called Sponge where I've written about how Pradeep Guha, ex-Times of India, who passed away earlier this year, how once particular, he was then CEO of Zee and I had gone there for a regular monthly chat with him, and he said, "Yaar, your art direction, kuch karo yaar, chahiye to I'll put you in touch with some freelancers." I said, "Yaar, what are you complaining about?" He said, "Nahi, wo dekho, kasam se ka hoarding itna ganda hai." I said, "Yaar, Pradeep, that is what is on the hoarding. But do you know what the agency presented?"
Yeah, I remember the story. Right.
He said, "Haan, kya hai?" So I showed it. This was first version, second version, third version, fourth version. So he said, "What? This was approved? This was not approved." I said, "No." Why? I said, "Why did they approve that?" I said, "They said it's too classy. We need massy." So he called the head of marketing. He said, "Yeah, sit down." So then he said, "Did you?" He said, "Yeah, we saw this, Pradeep. This is not It's not class. Our consumer is not classy. They're very massy. So they will not appreciate all this kind of thing. So we took this. So he said, hold it. And you read the story, you know what. So he ordered it. So he said, but Raju fellow picked the first option, which he thought was a good option. So he said, Raju, chalo. So he said, look, you think your consumer is bad memory in terms of they can't decide anything. So don't dumb down everything. He told his marketing head, don't dumb down everything. Your consumer is actually changing. He or she is much more sophisticated than what you think. So when I wrote the book and I sent it to him, and he read it, he said, yeah. Then he said, yaar, ye hua tha kya? I said, साले हुआ था क्या? Said, हाँ, but यार you इतना detail में तूने लिखा है, you know, अच्छा है, good. He had forgotten about it, but I remembered. And then one of the ways to remember these good stories, Harish, is to repeat them.
Right. Yeah.
If you repeat them, like some of the stories I've narrated in Sponge or even in Spring, are stories I've repeated to my team many times.
Correct.
So if you repeat them, it goes to your long-term memory, comes back to your short-term memory, goes back, and it stays. It's a skill which all of us can pick up.
Were you always a natural raconteur, storyteller, or did you have to work towards this?
I'm not a natural. I think I picked it up in the last 20 years working in advertising with Anil Kapoor and a bunch of my close colleagues. We used to regale each other with these stories. Everyone will come and say, this is what happened and this client ke paas gaya tha yaar. And वो बैठी थी, client बैठी थी, अब उसका भाई आ गया, दोनों गाना शुरू कर दिया. I said, what? हाँ, दोनों कुछ गाना गा रहा है. Oh my God. That stayed here. This story is about 20 years old. It stayed here. I said, God, they were singing a song. Yeah, they were singing a song. Yeah. I said, wow. And I don't need to say what happened to that company and what happened to the brand. But treating advertising as some plaything. So it's good to encourage storytelling and good to encourage your teams to share stories with you and repeat the stories. Whichever thing you make a point, repeat them. And as you repeat them, you can add some masala and make it sound. Some people say, "Arey, tu masala add kar raha hai." नहीं, ज़्यादा मसाला नहीं add कर, थोड़ा तो मसाला add करना पड़ता है. You know? As they say, embellish the truth.
Embellish is the word.
Embellishing the truth. So when you embellish the truth, it's that much more fun. You know?
And do you have a system of recording, capturing, noting them down, anything like that?
I do. I always wear a shirt with a pocket. And I always carry this little, when we used to go out for meetings, I always this little book in my pocket. And some of my friends used to ask me, Sala, tu passport leke ghum raha hai? Passport nahi hai, ye to notebook hai yaar, ispe likhta hu. Suppose you say something brilliant, na, main note kar leta.
Right.
And they say, yeah. So I must have run through 20 of these. This is great. You know, I mean, you forget, you write it down, it stays, and then you can go back to it. You know, the mere fact of writing it down helps you remember.
Yeah. So on that note, I think we'll bring this to an end. But before you go, I'm going to ask you for your hot take on the future relevance of something, whatever I ask you for. So what do you think is the future relevance of advertising agencies in India?
Advertising is undergoing a dramatic transformation, right? And agencies have been caught a little bit flat-footed here. I have a lot of hope that they will learn how to adapt to the new world of data and digital and all that. And the whole world of advertising is split between what is called performance marketing and brand marketing. I'm reading a book called Quantum Marketing, which these two have to work together. There's an interesting article shared by Lakshmipati Bhatt yesterday about how Adidas today is regretting their excessive focus on performance marketing. They're going to pull money out of performance marketing and put it into brand marketing. In fact, the article says they're not trapped. They stopped tracking brand metrics, which is like anathema, right? So I think agencies today are going through some kind of an existential crisis, but I think they will learn and they will come out just as they came out and they understood how to use radio, how to use television. They will figure out how to use digital forums.
Okay. What do you think is the future relevance of non-fiction books?
From what I'm hearing from my publishers, during the lockdown, non-fiction books have gone through the roof. For example, my book, Nawab Nude's Noodle, which is 50 years of Indian advertising, I wrote it was published in 2016. And suddenly last year, its sales started booming. Because people are saying, look, I'm sitting at home, I just will read something, make myself more useful. I think nonfiction is not going to go away anytime soon. I think there is going to be of course, there are multiple ways you can get nonfiction stuff. Your own CT compounds one way of getting it, you can get it on the net. But I think books will continue to be books. In-depth reading will continue to grow. And I don't think nonfiction is going to go away anytime soon. I think if at all, it will grow.
Okay. And the final one, what do you think is the future relevance of MBAs in India?
That's a tough one. MBAs have to be reinvented. MBA education, unfortunately, business schools, you're a product of one, I'm a product of one. Business schools have become nothing but placement agencies. They have to re-examine that. On what value are they adding. Maybe you'll have a system where you finish your MBA and the business school says after 3 years, you can come back for a 1 month intensive immersion.
Right.
Teach you new stuff. Someone has to innovate on all this. We'll have to wait and watch what happens. And of course, new areas like digital and analytics and digital transformation, where I've been reading. My head is spinning and I read all those digital transformation books. But it is happening, right? It is happening. Digitally powered manufacturing with multiple devices. Digital transformation can also be equated as, I know digital transformation because I know how to do spreadsheet. वो भी है. I think MBA education also needs to be rethought.
On that note, I think this is a fantastic chat. We probably have, if we just do a count of the stories and anecdotes, this will probably have the highest stories to minute ratio for any of our smartcasts. But it would have been foolish not to expect it from a storyteller like you and from a branding guru like you. Really happy, and it was a pleasure and a privilege to actually host you for this, Ambi. Thanks a lot. This was really great.
So thank you, Harish, for inviting me here, and I really enjoyed the conversation and the kind of meticulous homework you had done. So obviously, you guys at CT Compounds are doing something great. So thank you very much for having me, and all the very best. Yeah.
Yes, and we are going to have part 2 very soon. Yes.